BFB's birthday occurred recently on November 3rd, officially making the series 7 years old. Time really does fly. Right off the bat, I want to make it clear that this video is exclusively talking about BFB pre-split, or BFB 4A as it's officially called. And that's just because there's so many differences between pre-split and post-split to the point where they feel like entirely different shows, and many people online certainly treat them as such. I'll certainly make a video for BFB 4B when its birthday comes around, but for right now, I'm focused on the original. So from here on out, just know when I say BFB, I'm referring exclusively to the first 15 episodes. With that in mind, I don't think this is a very exciting or uncommon opinion, but BFB truly is one of my favorite object shows that I've ever seen. While there's plenty of great ones, both new and old, since day one, BFB has always just had a specific allure to it. It felt so fresh, was fun to watch, and each episode's release fostered an excitement in me that no object show has really been able to replicate. In the 7 years since it came out though, I feel it may be harder to appreciate the show these days because a lot of object shows have come out in that time, many that do way wilder things or have far more compelling premises than just battle it out for a prize. If someone's just joined the OSC and they're picking shows to watch, BFB is more often than not gonna be on that list, but it'll probably stand out a lot less considering there's shows like Animatic Battle and KFC now, which are just as quality and do a lot of what BFB has to offer. But that's how things are now. You have to look at things from the context of when it was first released. When BFB first came out, as the BFDI series in general so often is, it was a trailblazer, doing things no show had really ever done. The art style, for example. It's incredibly common in the OSC now, but it originated from BFB. It retains the same character assets from earlier seasons, but has much more unclean mouths and limbs compared to IDFB in BFDIA's geometrically rigid take, and I've personally always found it extremely visually appealing. It's obviously much more lackadaisical, but to me it's like weirdly mature or something along those lines. It just felt right for the series, you know? The style was implemented as a means to get episodes out more quickly, which was another part of BFB that was awesome. Episodes would come out extremely frequently, ranging from 2 weeks to 1 month of wait between episodes, for most of them at least. It made it so that things were never stale and you didn't have to nurse on the same episodes for months on end, which was a godsend having come off of BFDIA's and IDFB's hiatus. As time went on and the team hired more animators, the style definitely got much smoother, and in the Teapot era especially, it is extremely polished, to the point where there's a clear distinction between early BFB style and modern. I love the smooth look just as much, but I'm always gonna have a fondness towards the charm of the early look. You honestly forget just how simplistic and kinda choppy it was until you look back at it. When they used it for Book's Dream and Teapot 10, it was really sweet. More importantly though, I feel like this style did wonders towards inspiring more people to make their own show. While the traditional object show style isn't complicated, you definitely need some proper software if you're going to want to emulate it, which pretty much every show did at the time. BFB being more relaxed with its style made the barrier of entry much lower. It would make you go, well, if the creators of this genre in general did it, so can I. At the very least, it inspired me back in the day, at least with this comic that I may one day have the guts to show the world. But another aspect of the show that was just as notable as the style, 64 contestants. Once again, while that still would be an impressive number for today, there's plenty of shows that have high contestant counts these days, but back then, man, object overload was seen as the height of character counts, and in BFB they more than doubled that. The entire original 21 characters from the first season, the 30 original recommended characters as well, and even some few extras from a joke video made in 2012. It was unreal seeing this many contestants compete. The fact that the beginning of the first episode just kept going with more and more characters showing up still fills me with happiness when I rewatch it. All their personalities being set up and new interactions happening at every moment. Obviously that's nothing crazy, but it was just so cool seeing so many new faces. And while having this many characters could have led to the common issue of quantity over quality that many would worry about when the contestant count is that high, I feel overall BFB actually did a pretty alright job handling all the characters. Most certainly not perfect, some teams could feel completely sidelined for a while, and naturally some characters just got way more screen time and relevance. That's always gonna happen. But even with that, you could still at least find something to love, critique, say about with pretty much every single character. A fanbase could and was facilitated for each of them. None of them felt absolutely worthless. And even when some of them didn't get as much limelight, man, these teams were something special. I've already made a whole video about them, but groupings like Iance, Death Pact, Beep, real gems, I tell you. With such a diverse and loaded lineup, something entertaining was always bound to happen, and while some writing choices were I loved it all for the most part. My favorites have always been Black Hole, Nickel, Taco, and X. Which, speaking of, these dudes, I probably sound like a broken record, but once more, these days there's not much of a shortage of object show hosts that are wildly powerful and way different design-wise compared to the contestants, to the point where I honestly find it cliche. These two, though, they were the originals, and man were they wacky. You have to imagine how surreal it was seeing an intro this epic for the first time, in a series that had never remotely had something this majestic and intense happen in it, for it to cut to a number, and then a much lower quality version of that number. Quick side note, BFB also has one of the best intros in all of the OSC, just another thing that makes it so good. I really don't think there needs to be much said about 4 and X. They're some of the most iconic object show characters ever, and we all know by now they're wonderful. Like this scene right here. I remember being like, what the hell? But God, was it funny. They're just so fun and entertaining. It's hard to actually dislike them, in my opinion. Unrelated, but what might just be my favorite element of this show is the world of it, specifically the continuity. I know cartoons are allowed to cartoon, but I've always really liked when shows stand by pre-established elements and things that happened in previous episodes actually carry on, even if it's entirely trivial. And BFB does exactly that. Virtually everything that occurs to players or the environment carries on until they die or it changes again somehow. And that goes a very long way towards actually making the world these objects are in feel like a world. When Donut moved the moon to be right next to Earth, it remained there. When Beep's contestants got turned orange, they stayed orange. While most times it was purely cosmetic, sometimes the things that happened to the characters could actually affect them for quite a long time and change how they had to deal with challenges, like Cloudy being taped up making him unable to fly, which is awesome. To me, all these attributes come together best in BFB 15, the final episode of Free Split. I don't really count BFB 16 as Free Split, and without a doubt, my favorite episode of the season, probably my favorite object show episode ever. Coming right off the heels of the epic cave challenge two-parter BFB 13 and 14 was, BFB 15 continued the steam and gave the OSC an event of an episode in my opinion. The animation by this point was absolutely gorgeous, definitely far smoother than before and much closer to modern day teapot standards, but it still has a little sense of casualness to it, which is appreciated. The challenge itself was great because it made the seemingly boring prospect of make your way to a specific location very fun by the fact that there was lava covering the whole landscape, which was an event that had occurred in the last episode, and like I said, I love when they do stuff like that. The visuals are incredibly fun. They used actual team icons in this episode, which was something they never really did much, and I also love this one scene because something about these sound effects have always just hit perfectly for me. But the absolute best part of this episode is the writing, because everything feels just right. No one team feels like they focused on it too much, all the events flow so nicely from scene to scene, and nothing feels like it was rushed, which is something that couldn't always be said for every episode. I'm not saying every team did get like the exact same amount of screen time each, but for the teams that got less, it felt justified. Like Woody was stuck in Four's eye and his whole team was dead. How much could you do with that and how entertaining would it be? Here, you're always engaged, and what's better, the pacing actually feels good. One of my only gripes with Teapot these days, and definitely post-split BFB, is that stuff just happens. Like, it feels as if the writers don't trust that I can keep my attention to the episode without something happening every possible second. It often feels way too fast for me, but here in BFB 15, they actually take their time with each scene, which is way more enjoyable for me because I can actually digest the information. Not that I really need it to be digestible by this point, I've seen this episode probably like 25 times. And all the dialogue between characters actually feels natural too, which isn't really ever an issue in the BFDI series to me, but here, I don't know, it feels better. And the music as well, oh my god, how did I almost forget about BFB's soundtrack? It's practically all original music created by Michael, and there's truly many gems in here. It's not like video game music where you fear you'd get bullied for putting it on in the car or something. I feel like BFB's OST genuinely could just stand on its own as nice background music for mundane tasks or studying and whatnot. My absolute favorite track is Lickie, which you're hearing right now. I mean, you don't need me to say it, but it's just an incredibly intense and emotional track, and there's not many of those in BFB, so it stands out. Other jewels, though, include Goofin, Breakup Simulator Lite, Famous 600K, Coins, Chapter Complete. I can keep going, just go give the soundtrack a listen. BFB 15 uses some of the best tracks, which just adds to its perfection. Just overall, this episode felt way more sophisticated to me than what you'd expect for an object show, or really any YouTube series. Not in terms of the content, but in how it's presented. It feels like something you could see on a streaming site with just how absolutely polished and complete feeling it is, and it was certainly an excellent capping point for the season. I don't know if there's ever going to be a show that gets me as giddy as BFB once did, and honestly still does. Obviously nostalgia is a factor, but even looking past it, these are just good episodes. I'm not saying BFB has no mistakes or anything, but they're all just trivial to me. Maybe that makes me a bad critic, but I'm not trying to be a critic here, this is just a show I love, man. I always have fun when I rewatch the episodes, and even still sometimes catch new things in them that I didn't notice or realize before. It's awesome. I'm willing to admit to myself that there's other object shows that probably deserve the title of favorite a lot more, and there's plenty that I just haven't seen yet because I keep coming back to BFB like it's comfort food, but can you really blame me? BFB is just one of those media experiences I wish I could have for the first time again, and I'm always gonna reminisce on younger me's fun getting to see it all fresh, but I'm never gonna stop loving it, that's for sure, and I hope everyone watching can love it just as much as me. Thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, and take care.